Well, welcome to the Peaceful Table Workshop. I'm Nancy, and I am a communication coach and trainer. And I have been so excited to bring this workshop to life because so many people seem to be struggling in relationships right now for a lot of different reasons. And with the holidays coming up, we might have some strife at the table. And I thought, what if we could have a discussion to actually create a peaceful table instead? And so that's what we're about today. Are you ready for that? So let's just talk about what this means. We're here because I don't know about you, but I've noticed lately there's been a lot of discord in our society recently. A lot of division, not just about the elections. It's been going on for several years now, whether it's based identities or what we think are right and wrong choices or what we believe about something, or it's just a lot of people, I think, are discovering to label things that have happened in their past as traumatic or toxic, and it's putting divisions between people. We had COVID hit us and took us all retreating into our homes, electronic communication instead of face to face. And I'm seeing this pervasive sense of just not knowing how to communicate effectively together anymore, especially face to face. We're using our devices to communicate in sound bites and short things, and I'll get influenced by something some total stranger says to me on the internet that just makes me mad. And then if I find somebody in my real life who believes what that person on the internet said, I get even more mad. And it just is this vicious cycle. And somewhere we get to step back and say, what's happening here? And what can I do to stop it? What can I do to change the narrative and control not other people, but at least influence and have an impact on the environments that we find ourselves in? And so I know many people get together for the holidays. This week in the United States, we're facing Thanksgiving. There's going to be people who come together who aren't together all the time. And since that last time we were together, a lot of life has happened. And we may or may not be prepared for the strength of the emotions that people could be bringing to the table. And a lot of times it is those emotions. It's the fear, it's the anger, it's the disappointment, or the triumph. It's the other side. There's people out there who are so excited right now to the point that they have no empathy for people who are feeling disappointed and somehow feeling justified. And we don't have the care and concern for others that seem to be, I'm kind of nostalgic, like once part of the fabric of how we communicated as a society. So there was a verse that really struck out at me that I read recently in the Bible. It's Romans 12:18, and it says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And I think that is what really drove me to create this conversation here today. That if we have the power, in as much as it can be on us, we want to live at peace with everyone, starting with our holiday tables. So you might be thinking, oh, Nancy, you don't know my uncle. You don't know my cousin. You don't know my brother. You don't know my mother-in-law. She's impossible. She makes every gathering so hard. It's like, right. I don't know your people. I know mine. I've got my uncles. I've got my cousins. I've got the people in my world, and I can't control them. But I also know that if I'm honest, in the past, I've contributed to some of the contentious conversations that have been part of it because I lock horns and I engage and I do things that don't move us toward peace, but just stir things up. And words are powerful and our words matter. And because of that, you can have an impact. I think with a little bit of preparation, a little bit of forethought, and possibly a lot of prayer going into this holiday weekend. So my goal today is to encourage you to be intentional about your communication contributions to the gatherings that are coming up, to equip you with a few tools that you can use to influence the tone of the room, even leaving here with at least 2 new ideas or tools that you could implement, and really to exhort you, to encourage you to take this seriously, because the days are short and the people in your life matter. And these times of that seem less frequent than they used to, of when we are all gathered in person around these tables, doesn't happen as much as maybe it did once. And it's worth trying to create a memorable and positive experience for yourself and for the people in the room. So drop a 1 in the chat if you think you're ready to go on this, and then drop a yes if you, as you think about your family gatherings, anticipate there could be some contentious conversations, or anticipate that people coming to your holiday gatherings might have a moment to go at it, to be angry, to exchange words. I'm just curious if you're expecting that at all. All right. Well, I know that it's possible in any room, and it might even catch you off guard. But some of you might also be here because you are just thinking, I just want to know what you're going to say. I just want to be a positive influence, even though my family seems to be doing pretty okay. And if you are, yay, you. Hopefully, you still also find some things of value. So there's a lot of things that can influence the peace at our tables, and I've mentioned some of them. I made a list this morning: politics, religion, identities, cultural issues, the level of emotional intelligence that people have at the table, history of your family, history of relationships, past trauma, unresolved conflicts, passive aggressive behavior, and habitual poor communication, strong opinions, lack of empathy. And I think that's just the short list. There's any number of reasons that could feed a lack of peace or anger or frustration and resentment at our tables. So let's start with probably the most important place, and that's talking about mindset. What mindset can you adopt going into the holidays that would have the power to potentially influence others? The first thing I wanted to just say is that if you go into a gathering expecting a fight, I almost guarantee that you'll get it. You're already thinking, oh man, I just know Uncle Joe is going to be saying this, and I get so mad when he does it, and I'm just ready. And boy, if you want to spend your time equipping yourself to be the winner in a war of words, I would discourage you from that. I would say that while you can't, I think it's good to anticipate what conversations might arise, not to do it out of a sense of defensiveness and how you're going to, get back. But what if you knew that this is likely to happen and you thought, what could I do differently that I haven't done in the past that could, as my husband likes to say, diffuse the bear? He has a new chapter in his new book called Diffusing the Bear. And it's a sales book. And sometimes you'll have a customer who's so angry, they're not going to hear a word you say until you diffuse that. And so it's good to anticipate the conflicts might arise, but not in a defensive preparation, but so that you can have alternate ways to guide the conversation. Try to go in with an open mind and open heart. The second thing I'd suggest before the event even begins is that you cover the event in prayer. Speak what you want. I just heard a message this very morning about the power of tongue. Proverbs 18:21 says, the power of life and death is in the tongue. And so when we speak life over the people who are coming to the gathering, when we align our words with what God says, and guess what? God's really smart when it comes to people because he created us. He knows how our emotions work. He knows where we get into trouble. And so when we are very intentional about aligning our words with his word in our prayers, it goes so much better. And so think about the people who are going to be around the table. What if even between now and every holiday gathering, you were praying for the people in the room? Father, I pray for my mother-in-law. I know I've always struggled and we seem to get into a fight. I pray that I will have a heart of love for her that is only possible through you. Or it might be, I pray for my two cousins who always seem to be at odds with each other. I pray that you will either bring them both here with a really positive attitude, or you'll keep them apart during the gathering. I mean, you can be really specific in your prayers. And again, I'm not trying to say that you don't want to address important issues or talk about conflicts. But the problem is when you're here for a 1 day gathering, it's supposed to be a celebration. It's not very often the time or place to now address this long-term conflict. But things that you say and do could open the door for future healing if you don't just go back to locking horns like you always do. And so maybe your prayer is just that we will each come with a willingness to handle it differently than we have in the past. Another thing you can do in terms of preparation is identify partners and allies. And I'm not saying think ahead who in the room is going to think like you do and they're the people who are like on your side. I'm saying who in the room is like you are wanting to come and have a lovely, peaceful time as a family, a celebration, a memory creating event that we'll look back on and go, that was so much fun. It's been a long time since we enjoyed being together that much. Oh my goodness, we told all the fun stories and nobody got angry. Or if they did, it sure settled itself down fast. But who are the people who are in line with you on that? And talk with them in advance about some of these strategies. It's like, hey, I'm bringing a few tools. What do you have? And just be intentional. I think our biggest struggle is when we have conflict, we either do one of two things. We either avoid it completely or we just revert to the old habits. Whenever we've had conflict before, we just lock horns, we have a fight, everybody gets mad until somebody storms out and then it's over. And what can you do to change that dynamic? So I wanted to just share with you a few recipes, or what I call recipes, that can help also set the tone. And I think again, we're talking what you are bringing to the table, what your personal choice is for each of your interactions, for ways that you could influence the group, and things that you could even encourage others to do. But knowing that you can only control you. The person in the mirror is your locus of control here. And so I encourage you to come to your gatherings with a commitment to what I call connected communication. And connected communication is a mindset and includes three key ingredients. It's a decision that when I am interacting with someone, the main thing that I want to convey to them is that I see you, I hear you, and I share in your humanity. In fact, that means what I mean by that third statement is I don't see you and hear you as a political viewpoint. I don't see you and hear you as an ideology. I don't see you and hear you as a moral decision or a project or an argument I need to rebuke. I see you as a person. I see you as my cousin. I see you as my sister, my brother. And when we remind ourselves that we are connected as humans, first and foremost, and above all else, and given that connection by our loving Father who knew that we were created for community, it makes such a difference. And when I see your humanity, I can hear what you're saying with different ears. Even if you are saying something that is in complete opposition to my beliefs, when I see your humanity, I'm more inclined to go, huh, it's interesting that we can be family and think so differently. I wonder what experiences you've had that have made you so passionate about that, that's so different than my passion. I wonder what underlying goals we have that are actually very similar, but we've come to believe that different paths can get us toward those goals. And maybe it's even, I hope for a day where we can talk about this calmly, but right now we both seem really emotional. And maybe we just need to not talk about that today. But when you have that commitment to connection, and when you just even sprinkle words in for people where they can hear that you see them, instead of saying, oh, you're such an idiot. I can't believe you voted for that person. You're such an idiot. You're just being too harsh. You're so ignorant. You know, all the things we're seeing tossed out on social media don't belong at a peaceful table. And even just the words, it's like, huh, I think about that so differently. That's interesting. And that maybe is all you say about it, and you let it go. So that's connection. Remember that a little empathy goes a long way. Letting someone know that you understand that their viewpoint is different and then not making them feel wrong or bad about it is huge. One of my favorite ingredients in connected communication is what I call communication consent. And I recently came up with a visual for this that has really helped me understand what that is. And so for me, consent is clearing the time, space, and place before I offer feedback to someone. Instead of just saying, Naka's on the call. So instead of saying, Naka, I have this thought about you. I just want to say this. I have this idea and here it is. Boom. Or Naka, you shouldn't have done that. I just saw the way you handled that argument and man, you made it so much worse. Well, if Naka's coming off a bad argument with someone, the last thing that she needs is me to now criticize how she handled it. Do I have wisdom? Might I have observed something that could help my friend, my sister, my cousin do something better? Yeah. But if they're not prepared to hear it, I'm not building a bridge. I'm not creating a connection. I'm just being another person who's going to make them mad. And so what consent is simply asking permission. Hey, Naka, I have some ideas about that situation that I think could help it if you guys kind of get into it again. Would you be open to that? And then she can go, no, I just really like to be pissed at him, or no, we'll never figure it out. Or yeah, I'm really tired of just locking horns and I'd love some thoughts. Great. Now we can talk about it. I've built the bridge. But where I see people go wrong is, so this is, I'm just going to do my little drawing. I don't know if you can see it there. There's two lines and I'm picturing this as a river. And so let's just say on one side of the river is Sue, and on the other side of the river is Jane. So we have Sue and Jane on the side of the river. And this is actually a river. They actually own property there. So Sue owns this side of this land on this side of the river, and Jane owns this land on this side of the river. And in order, let's just say that I'm Sue and I've decided that I actually want to build a bridge to Jane's side of the river. I want to build a bridge. And so I have bought the supplies and I started putting bricks or whatever on my side of the river to, maybe it's wooden bridge, whatever it is. I've started doing the building process to make this bridge. But the problem is my bridge isn't going to be able to be a bridge if it doesn't have footings on this side of the river. But I don't own that land. Jane does. So if I want to build a bridge that goes from my side to Jane's side, I'm going to need to either buy Jane's land or I'm going to need to get her permission to build the footings that are needed for the bridge on her side of the river. And so when we don't practice communication consent, it's like trying to build this bridge without having the place to land and build that bridge on the other side. So when I say to Jane, hey, Jane, I have some feedback for you that might be kind of difficult. It was based on our conversation the other day, and I was really mad. I thought you were really mad, and I think we still need to talk about it. Would it be okay if we open that conversation again? And then Jane has a choice to say, no, we don't. I'm done with you. And I'm not going to be able to build that bridge. I didn't get the real estate. But when I ask her consent from the heart, and she believes my good intentions, she can say, yeah, I would like to talk about it because I didn't like how that went either. And now we've just started to put some footings on that side of the river. And then I can build a little bit and she can build a little bit, and then we meet halfway. And now we've got a path of communication that's open to us that wasn't before. But the problem when I don't seek consent is that it's me trying to build a bridge that isn't going to go anywhere because I don't have permission to build on that side of the river. So I think it's a really powerful tool to use in conflict situations before you offer anybody opinions or advice. If even you think about your peaceful holiday table and someone says, you just don't understand, or I can't believe, I don't even know who you are anymore because of who you voted for. Instead of just getting back at them, say, would it be okay if we actually just talked about it? Because I'm really happy to share what my underlying beliefs are, and I'm really curious about yours. Would that be okay? And now we have a chance to build a bridge. And we may get to the middle of the bridge and shake hands and go, all we can do is agree to disagree. But that's still better than standing on the two banks shouting at each other across the river that you're an idiot. So that's consent. And I think that's a really powerful ingredient in connected communication. One other thing I see at family gatherings that I wanted to bring up is what I call, I was thinking of the word, I'm still thinking of a word that might fit better, but I'm calling it allowance. And what I mean by that is that we have an opportunity to allow people. There's two elements where I come in. One is I can allow people to have their opinions and their interpretations of their own life. A lot of times we get into arguments because I'm trying to prove to somebody that their interpretation of their own experience is wrong. And because I don't agree with how they responded to something, they hear me judge, they hear me criticizing them. And what if I just allowed people to own their experience and interpret the way they wanted? In fact, I heard a really good quote on this week, and I wish I had a slide to put up. But the quote said, refusing to accept that a person is the most reliable reporter of their own life is a compassion deficit.
Mm.
Refusing to accept that a person is the most reliable reporter of their own life is a compassion deficit. And that's from Penn Holderness. Penn and Kim Holderness wrote a book called ADHD is Awesome. And I've been listening to that book on Audible. And that particular quote just jumped out at me. And I remember I've had experiences. I remember an argument years ago that I had with my sister where I said something that really made her mad. And when she told me about it, I said, oh, that's not what I meant. And you know what she said back to me? She said, yes, it is. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you're mad at me for something I said. And then I tell you that's not what I meant. And now I can't win because you told me that when I told you what I meant, that's not what I meant. And you can see the cycle of it. And I didn't have the skills back then to continue to work through it. And we just, kind of went away. It was super trivial, whatever it was, I'm sure. But that thought of just when we don't allow a person to have their own life experience, or we judge it, or we belittle it, we're really doing them a disservice. And again, will people do that to you? Will people come into the gathering and not give this allowance to you? Yeah, they might, but it's something you could even ask for. You could gently say, hey, I really feel criticized right now. It sounds like you're trying to tell me that how I'm interpreting my own life is wrong. Is that what you're saying? No, 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 no. It's just like it could open the door to really good conversations if you have new language to talk about things. So I thought about, as well as we go through this, some ingredients to avoid that you don't want to bring to the table. Condescension. And I think a lot of us in family gatherings, especially, there's just some people who, no matter how, you just know that you feel like they're looking down on you and, oh, that's so cute. That's quaint. How cute that you think that, or whatever it is. And so in as much as you can avoid being condescending, and I'd say the opposite is just being open to other people's experience, without judgment. Avoid bringing guilt and judgment for past mistakes. Passive aggressive comments like, oh yeah, sure, go ahead, do that. Or I'm trying to think of good examples and they're not coming to mind, but most people I know will say they have that at least one relative who is like says something really sweet, but there's that undercurrent of kind of gotcha or criticism in there. And the other thing to avoid is bringing up past errors and actions. And I think for families, this is really important. we get to allow each other to be in a state of growth as human beings. Don't just revert to our old roles. I think this happens a lot with siblings. You know how there's a pecking order, older brother always does this, middle sister does this person's always the troublemaker, that, and we keep them in those roles and whatever their character role was growing up. And we come back to these large gatherings and we bring up the stories that reinforce the roles. Now, sometimes our family stories are funny and they get told again for a reason. It's part of our family lore and our family culture. But I think sometimes we would be really wise to stop and think, that one story always makes us laugh. But guess what? Every single year, we remind my brother of that time he did that stupid thing. Do you think at some point in time that your brother might want to be released from that as the primary memory? What is he doing now that's exceptional? Despite that stupid thing he did that made the family laugh, how is he being successful? And how do we honor and celebrate that growth? Even things that we did that were unkind in our past. Is that person still unkind? Do they still have a reputation and everybody thinks they're the mean sibling because they were mean a little bit during their teenage years? And so for me, I really challenge families as a whole and you as one of the family to not just automatically go back to being in your roles. And one of the ways you can do that is conversation. It is celebration. And I think that is just a positive thing. Just curious right now, just as like a check-in at this point, I have a couple more things to share. Nika, I was just wondering if you had anything that has just jumped out at you as something that you could see either happening or doing differently at a family gathering based on what we've talked about so far.
Oh my gosh, so it's resonating a lot with me. So um I'll give a present day what's going to happen. So 8 years ago, there was an issue that happened and it was political. And I hadn't been to Thanksgiving dinner with my family in 8 years since that happened. And I initiated just reaching out to the person and saying, I love you. I want to put everything behind. Can we just move forward? And from that happened last year, by Christmas, just before Christmas. So we were able to have Christmas dinner. So this will be the first time in 8 years that we're going to have Thanksgiving dinner. But what I learned is definitely some things that you just talked about was um, people are who they are, but also people get to grow. And so not holding on to grudges or different things that happened in the past is what will bring us to live in the current moment and think about what's present now. So I don't go into rooms with expectations of what's going to happen. People will be who they are, and I get to if it's something that I know is going to create angst and anger, then I get to pull back if that's where I want to be, or take that person aside and have a one-on-one conversation as opposed to bringing it to the big group. But
Oh,
yeah.
that's really wise. I think I'm really glad you said that because one of the elements as I was talking about consent was clearing time, space, and place. And I would say the place, a conflict conversation should never take place in front of a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that there's two people, if there's any kind of power differential, any kind of past embarrassment, or, that you just set one another up for failure in that conversation. So I love your tactic of, hey, this seems like it's something we really do need to talk about. And if it's a good time, let's go aside and do it here. But let's grab coffee this week, or let's hop on a Zoom if you're not always together. Because I love that you started with, I love you. I love you and I want this relationship. And that's a huge part. When I talk about connected communication, I see you, I hear you, I share in your humanity. And when it's family, it's also, I love you. And I think that there's just times where, I think one of the things that we can equip ourselves as we go into a gathering, we may not be involved in the conflict communication, but we're like right there. And so we get to choose what role. The typical choices are, I'm going to take sides. And so sometimes two people are going at it, and then we have people get on this person's side and get this person's side. And that rarely goes well to make a peaceful family gathering. The other thing we might do is somebody takes it on them to put their striped shirt on, and now I'm the referee. You over here, stop it, and that really conveys a superiority that is unintentional. You're putting yourself in an authority position over them. And again, you didn't get their consent. Now, if you want to say to them, it's like, oh, you guys are really going at it. It's like, are you happy with this discussion? No. Okay. Do you want me to help? No, we want to figure it out. Great, back off. There's different ways that you can be a referee without being an imposed referee, but you can contribute. But sometimes it might be just depending on how heated it's getting. It might just be saying, wait, guys, I love you and I love you. And it is so hard for me to see you guys fighting like this. Is there some way that I can help? And sometimes just doing that's enough to shift the energy, where they'll go, no, we just need to change the subject, or no, we really need to work this out, whatever it is. But I think having it's like, I look at that kind of intervention as like a pattern interrupt. Sometimes people just need a pattern interrupt. You see two people falling back into their lifelong habits, say two siblings who can't go more than 10 minutes without starting an argument. And it always makes everybody, it just wrecks the gathering for other people. How can you interrupt that pattern, but not in a way that puts them down, not in a way that makes them feel small? You can honor people's dignity while still interrupting those patterns. So thank you for sharing that. That was really, really helpful in sharing those ideas. I want to just wrap up with a couple of reminders and practical things. I told you I'd leave with some practical tips, and I think I've shared some already, but I have a couple more. But just one other mindset shift or a mindset you want to adopt is that your family and friends, whoever's at your gathering, it's people first. Remember, you were family, you were friends long before any of the current issues of our day came to divide us. You had years of your relationship before you decided that you were standing on the opposite sides of that river with no way to ever cross a bridge. And these political seasons are going to shift throughout our lifetimes. And if we literally allow a political climate to divide us as people, we're all going to basically die alone. You're going to get to a point where there's not going to be a single person on the planet that aligns with everything you believe. And if your criteria for being engaged with someone is agreement, you're going to be alone. You are going to be alone, period. And so if you value community and you value your family, you get to come with that attitude that I'm a bridge builder. I'm a consent seeker. I'm the person who's going to do that. And again, it's going to take time. It may not happen in a single event, but you can be planting seeds. And always remember that division is a tool of the enemy, the devil himself. And I used to tell my kids, don't play in the devil's playground. When you recognize that you're in the devil's playground, it is not safe. It is when you fall hard. You end up alone. You end up hurt. Go to God's playground where the things are safe and fun and community. And just remember that if there's division there, that's somebody who's really excited about your division. And that's not who you want to make excited. There's two practical ideas. One actually came from my friend Craig, we were talking this morning, and he said something that his family does is really powerful. And they've started a tradition in their family where he calls it, I named it the circle of gratitude. That because, especially for Thanksgiving, it's such a great thing to do that whoever's gathered around your table, you take a moment and say, okay, it's time. What we're going to do is everybody's going to go around and they're going to tell each person something they're thankful for. So if you have 10 people at your table and it's my turn, I get 10 people saying, Nancy, I'm really thankful for, the food you made. It can be super practical. It can be, Nancy, I'm really thankful for how you bring some fun to the environment. Or it can be, I really saw your creativity, whatever it is. And if it's from the heart, it doesn't have to be massive. If you're mad at the person right now because of who they voted for, go to the past and say, you know what? I've never forgotten the time that you dot, dot, dot. There's always something good you can find in a person. And if you can't, that's a heart issue for you. I'm just going to be really blunt. If you can, if there's somebody in your life who especially is family, and you cannot find a single good thing to say about that person, I would say examine your heart because you've put up a wall. And so that's me really being like very direct. I did not ask consent before I told you that. So if I've offended you, I'm sorry. I forgot to ask for consent. Can I tell you something? Can I give you a hard message? We ask for after consent, right? So remember, so the circle of gratitude, I think would be a really cool activity. Now, interestingly, I thought about how this could play out in my family. I have some very introverted people in my family who do not like to speak in front of the large group. And so maybe what you would want to do is circle off, like if your table's bigger than 5 or 6 people, you would maybe say, okay, you 3 do your circle of gratitude, you 3 and you 3, so that nobody's talking to more than 1 or 2 people in expressing gratitude. But you're still changing the vibration of the room. You're still bringing gratitude, which is one of the most powerful, vibrations that we can have, and really making a difference. Another tool that I want to encourage, like if you just know that no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to get these people off the political discussions or whatever that's bringing the contention, there are tools that you can use. I have 3 different ones here that I just shared. One is these chat packs. This is something I used to use in my Toastmasters club. They're just literally little cards that are supposed to be conversation starters, and they have lots of different themes. Like you could probably get it on Amazon by Wednesday if you need to. This one is a focus. Mine is chat pack, greatest, oldest, weirdest, coldest. They're safe. They're neutral. They're not going to, bring up a lot of controversy. What's the worst job you can ever imagine having? What is the greatest extent you've ever gone to in order to get a gift for someone? These are things that can lead to stories and conversations. And oh my gosh, can I share that? Can I answer that question too? You could literally have these scattered around the table, even in advance. And if things are just either getting awkward, say time out, chat pack question, and then ask somebody to grab one and just shift the energy, pattern interrupt. This is the same thing, just a different tool. This is a one called Family Conversation Cards. I got this at a gift shop. What is a small thing that makes you happy? What is the most fun you've ever had? So really similar, but safe. What is the best advice you've ever been given? That in general, and you can pre-select these. Sometimes these cards can be pretty random. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's going to open up something political. So weed them out, be strategic. But these are wonderful tools. And then the last one is a really fun one. There's books like this out there. This is a Prayers to Share. This is a book called 100 Pass Along Notes from Marshawn Evans Daniels. And it says, pass along notes for believing bigger. And I will sometimes take these to a gathering and I'll pre-select them. And I'll let people draw them just to say, hey, I have this message for you that I want to share. And then people draw it. And it's just, it's something like, you are not forgotten. I'm standing with you in prayer, watching him guide you deeper into his peace and power-filled presence. And one thing that I've done in a couple different gatherings is after people draw the cards, I have them either send me a screenshot of it, or I've actually numbered them and I have them send me the number of the card, because I took pictures of them before I distributed them. And then I tell them I'll be praying this prayer over them. And there's nothing like telling people that you're going to be praying for them to really shift the mood in a room. And I think that could be, or you could pass these out and then people discuss them as like discussion topic cards as well. So those are some practical things, the circle of gratitude, and then using a tool to shift conversations so that we steer people to something that's neutral territory or more positive in a vibe. So before I close, if there's are there any questions? Yeah, Nick, next question.
I wanted not really a question, but I wanted to add, because of introverts at the table, could you possibly just have like pieces of paper that said, I am grateful for, and then they're able to fill it out. And then at the table, just have people just randomly pick them up and read them.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
And then you're not putting people on the spot. Because
Yeah.
sometimes people, like, if you tell me, oh, we're gonna have this gratitude exercise, and we did something similar to this in my family for a few years, and it was on birthdays. And so one of the ways we'd go around the table and everybody had to say something, positive to the birthday person. And my
Hmm.
youngest son was pretty young at the time. And I think everybody was saying these, well, mom, you did da da da. And my husband would, all these nice words. David just kind of sitting there and he goes, you pretty.
You
And
are pretty.
it's become the joke. Every time we've done that since then, somebody will go, you pretty. And it's just, again, but we don't necessarily need to remind David of what he did when he was 10 years old or whatever.
Right.
But it's a fun family memory. But I really like that as a good alternative to have everybody write it down and then just randomly draw it and read it.
Mhm.
Think that that's really good. So, because you're here in this room, I really believe that your heart's already aligned, with our theme verse today in as if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And I hope that you've gotten some ideas and suggestions for that peace that you can bring to the room. Cover the event with prayer. Get your mindset right. Believe that you can have a positive gathering. Don't come ready for a fight. And again, you don't have to be the referee, the forced peacemaker, but just pray that you'll have these organic, natural opportunities. If just on a pretty serious note, I guess to wrap it up, because I think for me, it's even if it's effortful to do this, be driven and encouraged to remember that time is short. I know some of you are missing people at your tables this year who aren't there anymore. And my sympathy and my heart goes out to you. If you have an empty chair at the table this year, I know that that's really hard. And some of us honestly may need to be reminded that even if we're really at locking horns, I've used that expression a lot, even if we're very contentious with someone, that person may not be at the table next year. And you may not be. We don't know. Time is short. If the person you struggle with the most was gone by tomorrow night at midnight, by the day after your gathering at midnight, what could you say to them during your holiday gathering this year that would leave you with no regret? How can you behave toward them to seek peace so that if something happened to you, they would not be filled with regret about how you interacted with each other at the table? And so bringing that note of reality, I think, is an important driver, because when we come in ready to protect our territory and protect our opinions and defend our ideologies, we are not going to have that long-term peace and joy that can be part of being in community and being in family. And so my prayer for each of you is that as you come to your gatherings, you bring that peace. You be the peace of Christ, and you will be amazed at how much influence even one person can have. In fact, when I teach communication, I talk about the power of one to make a difference in the room. And then when one person, because of how they're behaving and communicating, influences another, it becomes the magic of two, because now you have two people spreading that energy and guiding those conversations. And then when that really catches, you become the unstoppable many. And you could be the catalyst for a long-term change in how it's always been for your family, starting this year with your contribution to a peaceful table. So thank you for being part of this today. I'm really glad that you came. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Please feel free to reach out to me on social media if you have questions. You can email me at nancyz@nancyz.com. I would love to support. If you have a particularly sticky situation you'd like some coaching on, let's talk about it. I'd love to just set up a quick coffee chat and support you if I can. So thanks, and I wish you very peaceful holidays.